Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Pet Protect UK, how can I help?
Oh, hello there. I'm calling to inquire about your pet insurance plans.
Of course, just give me a second, please.
Sure.
So, have you checked our website already to see the options we offer?
I've had a quick glance, and I think I'm interested in the basic plan.
Great. I need to just ask a few questions first then. Is your pet a dog, a cat, or a rabbit?
It's a dog.
And is it a puppy or...
No, he's 3 years old.
Right. May I ask, has your dog been insured before?
I just adopted him from the rescue center last week, and I think he'd been there a while, so I doubt it.
Okay, so you've had him for a week then?
That's correct.
Great. I apologise for asking this, but your dog, what's his name, by the way?
Fenton.
Fenton, is that spelt with an F?
Yeah, Fenton.
Great. Thank you for that. So, according to the rescue centre, has Fenton ever attacked, bitten, or been aggressive towards a person or another animal?
No, not at all.
Excellent. And is he a guide dog or...
No, just a house pet.
Great. And you said he's 3 years old. Do you know the exact date of birth?
Oh, yes, it's on the adoption certificate. Just give me a sec. It's May 19th, 2013.
And do you know, has Fenton been neutered?
Yes, he's been castrated.
Excellent. And final question, what type of dog is Fenton? Is he a pedigree, a crossbreed, or a mixed breed?
A crossbreed, I think.
Right, crossbreed...
Wait, sorry. What's the difference between the three?
A pedigree is a dog whose parents are of the same breed. A crossbreed is from 2 different breeds, while a mixed breed is 3 or more.
Then he's a mixed breed. Sorry about that.
Right, no worries. So, could I take your full name, please?
My name is Peter Pischinger. That's Pischinger.
Right, thank you for that. And what's your address?
That's 27 Cherry Drive, NW8 3HD.
3HD. And finally, a telephone number, please.
020-3634-7957.
Thank you.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 7 to 10.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
Now, you said you were interested in the basic plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
May I ask, are you planning to switch insurance providers after the first year of your pet insurance, or is there a possibility you might renew with us?
I haven't really thought about it. Why?
The reason I'm asking is because if you plan to renew with us, it might be worth considering our premium or ultimate premium plan. With the basic plan, you will have to pay the same fee of £8 per month regardless of how long you stay with us. If you choose one of our other 2 plans, though, you will receive a discount for the first 6 months. You'll only have to pay £12 for premium and £15 for ultimate. And then, depending on your circumstances, you might be eligible for further discounts after your first year, depending on how many expenses you claim. If you claim less than £300, you'll have to pay the same as for the basic plan, but receive the cover provided by the premium plan.
Huh.
Is that something you might be interested in?
I'll have to think about it. Is it possible to switch to one of the other plans later on?
Yes, of course. You can always upgrade.
Let's stick to the basic plan for now then, and then I might call you back to switch.
No problem.
So, what happens now?
Well, first we would need you to come over with little Fenton so we can have a look at his documents and medical history. We'd also need you to get him to the vet for a quick checkup. All of this is standard procedure before we can proceed with the insurance plan. And then, when all that's done, you can either set up a direct debit in person or you can call us back and do it over the phone.
Right. And the basic plan will cover...
Well, the basic plan covers veterinary fees, obviously, plus a few more things such as boarding costs, loss by theft or straying, advertising and reward, death by accident or illness. You can find a comprehensive list on our website, or I could forward it to you via email if you prefer.
Thanks. I'll check the website.
No problem. So, shall we book you an appointment so you can come over?
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You'll hear a man talking about living and working on Trinidad. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinfold, and I'm here today to tell you about my gap year, which I took about 20 years ago. Unlike many students these days who go travelling or get some work experience between school and university, I decided to do something completely different after finishing my degree. I applied to work for a charity organisation. What it does is it sends people with particular skills to countries where those skills are needed. Apart from having some experience teaching English to summer school students, I didn't have any particularly useful skills, I thought, but luckily I was still accepted. I had to find the money for the flight, but you get free accommodation. I stayed with a family of 5. And you do get paid, but not much. It's a bit like pocket money, enough to get by. I worked in an orphanage and taught English at a local school. Where was I? Well, originally I was going to be sent to a village in India, but at the last minute the organisation decided to send me to Trinidad. Now, this is a fascinating place. It's an island in the Caribbean. Well, in fact, the country is actually 2 islands. The smaller one is called Tobago, which is connected somehow to the word tobacco. Anyway, there I was, a young white guy living and working on an island which is mostly a mixture of descendants from Africa and India. The Africans were originally brought over as slaves, and the Indians came later as indentured workers. That means they agreed to come for a specific time, but many of them stayed. There are also some Trinidadians of Chinese and British origin, though the native inhabitants were basically wiped out by colonialization. I myself felt completely accepted and had the time of my life. The language everyone speaks is English, so there was no problem for me there, but some concepts don't quite translate. They're pure Trinidadian. There's the term liming, for example, which means sitting around watching the world go by. Also, there's the famous carnival, when the whole island is taken up in playing mass. For a whole month, around February or March, it depends when Easter is, everyone's busy preparing costumes, practicing calypsos, soca and steel pan music, and most importantly, partying.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
When the actual official carnival starts, it's days of 24-hour dancing in the streets. In Trinidad, it's called whining. You've probably seen this sort of thing on TV, in the more famous carnival in Rio, or even at the Notting Hill Carnival in London. Many people join bands, each one of which has a theme. For example, the Sea or Jungle Fever, and they have costumes designed and made to go with the theme. These can cost $1,000 for the king and queen of each band. They're incredible. The whole city is a non-stop party zone, full of colour and sound. It's serious, too. The bands are in competition, and the winner gets $1 million. Sorry, I got a bit carried away with those memories. Back to my real job there. The orphanage was called St. Augustine's, and that's also the name of the place where it was, St. Augustine, a town just outside the capital city, Port of Spain. I didn't have any particular job description, just to be with the children and tell stories, sing songs and play games. Oh, and we also went camping in the jungle once. I could tell you a few stories about that particular escapade. Every time I arrived at the gate, kids would come running towards me, shouting, with big smiles on their faces. The younger children seemed fascinated by my blonde hair and loved to touch it as if it was something miraculous. The English teaching I did 2 days a week in a primary school for 6 to 11-year-olds. The kids may have been poor, but they all wore neat and clean uniforms and were so respectful and enthusiastic. I've now been teaching for many years in different countries, and I still think those were the best students I've ever taught. What else did I do while I was there? I swam a lot. Can you imagine what it's like swimming with dolphins and with pelicans diving into the sea right next to you? More seriously, I trained to be a Samaritan. That's someone who listens and supports people who have problems with their lives. Overall, what I took from the experience was a sense of being in another culture, or rather cultures. As humans, we all share many characteristics, but we express ourselves in various ways. In Trinidad, there are lots of different communities and religions, and so many different kinds of festival to see. Hindu, Muslim, Christian, as well as some rather mysterious African traditions. There are quite a few Rastafarians, too. Trinidad is, as Americans are fond of saying of their own country, a melting pot, where everybody is greeted warmly. Go and see for yourself. I'm not sure how it's changed since I was there, but I'd love to find out.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between 3 students who are preparing a presentation.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hey guys!
Oh, hey Gail, you made it.
Yeah, sorry. I was stuck at the library paying late fees. Have you guys started going through the data yet?
Yeah, we've already collated it and we've started designing the graphs we're going to use in the presentation.
Oh, really? That's fast.
Well, anyway, here's what we've got so far.
Okay, so... Wow, 38% said they thought about quitting school in the first year. That's a huge number.
Yeah, and only 10% said they were happy at school from beginning to end. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought the majority would be happy here.
Well, just remember that about 30% of the school population are foreign students, and from the UK students, only 2% are actually from the area. So, I guess it makes sense that people would miss home.
Yeah, but to want to actually quit school...
Well, they didn't want to exactly, they just thought about it.
Okay, so how should we organise the presentation? What did you guys decide?
Well, Kevin and I were saying that we should start by explaining what the topic of our research was, and how we decided to collect the data. So, I'll start by saying that our topic was how first-year students felt a month after beginning school, and how their attitudes progressed and changed by the end of the academic year.
So then we were thinking that I should explain that the population we want to study was obviously first-year students, but because we need their complete experience from the beginning to the end of their first year, we'd have to actually poll students in their second and third year. And then we said that you should explain how we access the population.
So I'll say that we got the permission from the school to go to different classes from different departments and hand out the surveys in paper form, right?
Right. And that it took us about 3 weeks to complete this part of our research.
So then we need to describe the 3 different areas of focus of our survey. So Lindsay can do that. Say that the survey had 3 sections. The first one asking just some general questions about the age, gender, nationality and field of study of each student. Then the second one focused on how they felt in their first 6 months at school. And the third, how they felt in the summer after their first year was complete.
That sounds good.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 26 to 30.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so let me see the breakdown. Okay, so we've got an equal distribution of boys and girls. That's good.
Almost equal. 51% of the participants were boys, the rest were girls.
Right, and 70% of the participants were British, while the other 30% were...
10% were from America and Asia, 2% were from Africa, and 18% were European. We had a small number of Australians as well, 0.03%, so I guess Europeans were 17.97% if you want to be precise.
Which we should. Anyway, and obviously the age was all 20 or 21, with a few 19-year-olds. Only about 5%. No, wait. 4%. Right?
No, it's 5%. Look.
Right. Okay, so Lindsay will describe the 3 sections, and then you, Kevin, you'll describe the demographic and geographical breakdown, and
You can start with the graph, and then we'll all explain the data together.
Right, so we'll put this graph up on the board and explain that most students experience some form of homesickness or mild depression in the beginning of their course.
But we need to point out that by the end of the year, it was only 5% that still felt like quitting school.
Yeah, but remember that we didn't actually have the opportunity to interview or poll any of the students who left school. So the information we have only relates to current students, and those numbers might be bigger in reality.
Yeah, I guess we need to mention that. But we did check the dropout rate for the last 2 years, and it was very low, so at the end of the day, the numbers can't be much bigger.
Yeah. Anyway, so after we explain the data and we show the 3 graphs with the background information and the responses for 6 months and 1 year, we should spend some time also talking about...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about how adults and babies communicate.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hi, I'm Emma Bailey, and today I'm going to be talking baby talk. Hopefully, you'll find the subject interesting rather than infantile. I'd like to start by getting you to imagine a scenario. You're in an office or at a family gathering when a mother comes in with her young baby. Like everyone else, you want to see the mother and baby, and you probably want to talk to the baby. How do you do this? What kind of language do you use? Recent research has shown that adults all talk to babies in similar ways. They repeat phrases over and over again in a high-pitched sing-song voice with long vowel sounds. And if they ask questions, they exaggerate their intonation. Researchers have discovered that this kind of language, which they have called motherese, is used by adults all over the world when they talk to babies. And according to a new theory, motherese forms a kind of framework for the development of language in children. This baby talk, so the theory goes, itself originated as a response to another aspect of human evolution, walking upright. In contrast to other primates, humans give birth to babies that are relatively undeveloped. So, whereas a baby chimpanzee can hold on to its four-legged mother and ride along on her back shortly after birth, helpless human babies have to be held and carried everywhere by their upright mothers. Having to hold on to an infant constantly would have made it more difficult for the mother to gather food. In this situation, researchers suggest, human mothers began putting their babies down beside them while gathering food. To pacify an infant distressed by this separation, the mother would talk to her offspring and continue her search for food. This remote communication system could have marked the start of motherese. As mothers increasingly relied on their voices to control the emotions of their babies and later the actions of their mobile juveniles, words emerged from the jumble of sounds and became conventionalized across human communities, ultimately producing language. Not all anthropologists, however, accept the assumption that early human mothers put their children down when they were looking for food. They point out that even modern parents do not do this. Instead, they prefer to hold their babies in their arms or carry them around in slings. They suggest that early mothers probably made slings of some kind, both for ease of transportation and to keep their babies warm by holding them close to their bodies. If this was the case, they would not have needed to develop a way of comforting or controlling their babies from a distance. It's not only anthropologists, but also linguists who challenge this explanation for how language developed. They say that although the motherese theory may account for the development of speech, it does not explain the development of grammar. Nor, they say, does it explain how the sounds that mothers made acquired their meaning. Most experts believe that language is a relatively modern invention that appeared in the last 100,000 years or so. But if the latest theory is right, baby talk, and perhaps fully evolved language, was spoken much earlier than that. We know that humans were walking upright 1.5 million years ago. This means that mothers may have been putting their babies down at this time and communicating with them in motherese. We can be sure that this is not the end of the story, as anthropologists and linguists will continue to investigate the origins of this most human of abilities, language.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it to me.